Hello, and welcome to the Wrap Up Live, where I'm Oren Weisfeld, and I'm joined by nobody. I'm all alone today. But hey, that's okay because I'm excited to talk about mostly Nick Nurse. But look, you're joining me right after the Raptors lose, 150 the Philadelphia 76ers. The game's actually 10 seconds left, but it's pretty much over. So maybe that's why nobody's here quite yet. But yeah, like the Raptors are going to lose this game to the Philadelphia 76ers. They're going to fall to 38 and 39 on a night where the Hawks won. The Nets won, which was kind of the 6th seed. The Raptors are trying to chase, unlikely, but yeah, and the Bulls won as well. So, not ideal, obviously. Every game matters, and I do think that Raptors fans are assuming that the Raptors are going to make the playoffs through the play-in. And I would say that they really every game matters a lot right now because that is not a guarantee. If the Raptors especially fall into the ninth or the 10th seed, and then they have to play, a one-off against like a Chicago, for example, who maybe aren't a great matchup for the Raptors. Like that is that is just a proposition that the Raptors don't want to deal with. And I know that everyone's assuming they're going to get a 7 or 8 seed, but the Hawks are playing pretty well. They're winning a lot of games. The Heat have a couple game cushion now, especially with this loss. So nothing's really guaranteed for the Raptors in terms of getting into the playoffs past the play-in. Every single game matters. This game mattered a lot. Um, and yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about this Philadelphia 76ers game. Sorry, I'm just tweeting out the link here on Twitter. I'm going to talk about this game with the 76ers, but what I really want to talk about after that is some of the Nick Nurse rumors that I'm sure people have seen, linking him to the Rockets and his pregame comments today as well, which I thought were pretty significant. So we'll get into that. First, I'm just going to talk about this game. I think the big thing was the lack of consistency from the Raptors on the defensive end. There were stretches in this game where the Raptors played really good defense and they turned the Sixers over 18 times. It could have been 25. Like there was a ton of loose balls, a ton of deflections. I thought the Raptors really created some havoc on that end of the floor. Didn't come up with as many turnovers as they could have in that way, and didn't finish those fast break points off turnovers as well as they could. But the real issue was the consistency. Like they would have those stretches in the first quarter. They had a really good stretch of defense after that first time out. But then, they would get a couple of deflections, not come out with the ball, kind of hang their heads, and then kind of give up these threes. So it was like there were stretches of really intense defense and just like locked in defense. And then there were stretches where two guys are going to the same guy, they're not communicating, they're switching stuff way too easily. That I thought was a problem in this game. Like Pirtle switched off of Embiid, I think gave Barnes the Embiid assignment way too easily instead of just going under a screen and staying on Embiid. They did the same thing with like Harden and Maxey. Just Raptors were giving off really soft switches that I don't think they have to do. I was listening to the Nerder Pod on the Athletic NBA show today, and they were talking about how the Thunder, one thing they do really well is they switch only late shot clock possessions. And I think the Raptors would really benefit from that kind of stuff. Like if they only like obviously there's certain matchups they're fine switching like 1 through 4, but those other matchups that they give up, if they only switch them late in the shot clock, I think they would just have a lot more success. Whereas if the opposing team knows that you're going to switch every screen, it's a lot easier to game plan for that. And I thought that was the case with Philly today. Um, Other than that, what do I want to say about this game? Yeah, okay. So pull up. Yeah, okay. So in terms of the defense, I already talked on it. They did have some moments where it was really wrecking havoc. They could have had way more turnovers than they did. But then offensively, the Raptors themselves had 13 turnovers, and you felt them. Like they were really timely turnovers, and I just felt like if they were going to win this game, they had to take way better care of the ball than they did. And ultimately, I think that was a huge reason that they lost. Just sloppy play. Van Vliet with 6 turnovers. Um, all the other starters pretty much with 2. And yeah, like, this is a really good 76ers team, give them credit where credit's due. No Tobias Harris, but if the Raptors were gonna win, they were gonna have to come out and just play a nearly perfect game, basically, without, Gary Trent Jr. in the lineup. And OG was great, Scotty was great, Pirtle was good. Fred and Pascal just not good enough, especially offensively. Like, Pascal, it really wasn't his night, yet he kept taking those jumpers down the stretch of the game, and I think he should have either deferred or, drove a little bit more instead of settling for jumpers. Um, yeah, like, right now, teams are giving him the jumper, and he's kinda going to that instead of getting into some of his, counters, and I think that's because the paint is pretty cramped, so some of those counters are a little bit difficult for him, but it was not his night, to say the least. And yeah, Fred with some really timely turnovers, not like him for sure, but that was the case tonight. And defensively, I thought he was better than, like, definitely you noticed the difference how he was on Maxey in this game compared to how he was in the playoffs, but still not quick enough to stay in front of guys like Harden and Maxey. Um, and yeah, Boucher's the only guy coming off your bench doing anything for you. That's really hard to match up when, the Sixers get 5 guys come off their bench, all of them play at least 12 minutes and just get, like, buy the starters rest. I think that was pretty clear down the stretch of the game. They were more rested. And and their bench was just deep tonight, deeper than the Raptors team. So I thought that was the big thing. Like, Scotty, really great game. You wish that he got some of the reps towards the end of the game based on how he played. But overall, just encouraging that Scotty's playing as well as he has been over this little stretch here. I mean, really since the start of the new year, I think, but over the past couple weeks, especially, Scotty is playing the best basketball he's ever played. So that's encouraging long term. All right. Um, that's enough about this game. Uh, I really just think, like, it was pretty obvious early on in this game that the Raptors weren't gonna win it. Like, they did themselves some favors in the second half. They won both the 3rd and the 4th quarter, but they allow Philly to drop 46 points in the 2nd quarter and just take a 20-point lead into halftime almost. Like, at the end of the day, you knew where this game was going pretty early on. Yeah, the Raptors were gonna make a comeback. Yeah, they played a lot better in the second half, but those defensive kind of just on and off switches, the inconsistency on defense really hurt this team once again. It wasn't a lack of energy, it was just a lack of effort, execution on the game plan. Um, and then ultimately, give Philly credit again. They shot 38% from 3. I thought they made a lot of tough shots. They made a lot of open threes, and the Raptors only hit 8 threes themselves. So 8 compared to 12. So yeah. All right, enough of this game. So, in case anyone hasn't been paying attention, over the last like week or 10 days, um, Nick Nurse has kind of been in the rumor mill. There's been rumors linking him to Houston, the Houston Rockets. There's been rumors about Ime Udoka, the Celtics' previous coach, the Raptors being interested in Ime Udoka. So there's been these weird rumors. Doug Smith writes a column in the Toronto Star. Is Nick Nurse destined for the Rockets? Rumors suggest Ime Udoka could replace him in Toronto. This is when I really went, like, if Doug Smith writes about this, that means these rumors are really floating out there. Like, they're real and they're coming from somewhere. And look, they could be coming from Nick Nurse's agent. He's going to be eligible for a contract extension after next, or yeah, he's eligible. His contract's going to run out after next season. So this could be a play where he's trying to get more money. And if it looks like he has other options, then that obviously bodes well for money. Um, it also could be coming from a team like Houston, who might be a little bit desperate. It could be coming from all sorts of places. But once you see this in the Star, you know that there's some sauce to these rumors. There's some truth to them. Mentioned in these rumors, I think is interesting is, um, you know, in terms of the Houston part, Nick Nurse coached the Houston G League team for a few years before becoming an assistant coach in Toronto. That was his last stop before Toronto. Gerson Rosas was the, I think, like, executive vice president of basketball operations for the Rockets at that time. He since then left, went to Minnesota to head up that program, had some inappropriate relationship with a staffer, left Minnesota, and now he's with New York, but there's rumors that he will go back to the Rockets with Nick Nurse. Um, okay, so all that had, and then this is what happens pregame. Nick Nurse gets asked about this by, I believe, Tim Bontemps at ESPN. And because NBA players and coaches just can't refuse talking to ESPN, for some reason, they just love talking to ESPN. Like, if I asked this question, Nick Nurse would have just said, I'm focused on the game tonight. Let's move on. But because ESPN asked it, I don't know. They just feel this need to open up to ESPN to be buddy buddy with them. Maybe they like the attention, to be quite frank, that ESPN gives them. But this is the answer that Nick Nurse gave. I'm just gonna play the audio aloud. I don't know why I have earplugs in or earphones in. I really don't need to when I'm doing the pod alone. So take those out, play the audio aloud for you guys, and then I'm gonna talk about what I think about all of these rumors. Oh, oh, there's no sound? Why is there no sound? You guys haven't heard all this? Gosh. Okay, what's going on? Let me Okay, okay, let me turn it around. Okay. One more try. Here we go. No sound still. Okay, last try here. Here we go. Last try, guys. Um, okay. You guys hear me now? Okay, let's try it one more time. Tell me if there's sound. Let me know if there's sound or no sound. Okay, do you guys hear me? Just making sure you guys hear me. Um, I posted the link in the chat and I will read the quotes. I apologize. Here we go. Okay, okay, okay. Hello, hello. Okay, guys. Sorry for the technical difficulties. I apologize to our podcast listeners, especially for the technical difficulties. Uh, you guys should be able to hear me now. Okay, so I'm just gonna read the quotes out loud, um, because yeah, I tried to play the video and it didn't work. But basically, Nick Nurse said, first of all, I think when the season gets done, we'll evaluate everything, and even personally, I'm gonna take a few weeks off to see where I'm at, like you said, where my head's at, and just see how the relationship with the organization is and everything. It's been 10 years for me now, which is a pretty good run. 10 years with the Raptors. I don't know. Over those 10 years, we got to be up there in number of wins with anybody in the league. I don't even know where that is, but we've had a lot of big seasons. And then right now, my head is to make this as long of a season as possible. This team needs playoff experience, so that's where I'm at right now. Finish out these 6, see where we land, see if we can't creep up a spot or 2 in the standings, and then give them hell in the playoffs. See if we can get in a real series and take it from there. Asked if he had considered his future being somewhere other than Toronto, Nick Nurse said, "No, I'm concentrated on this job for sure, in this game essentially. But I think 10 years is a good time to sit back and reflect a little bit. So I think that we're going to do that all when the season ends." Okay, I think that's the biggest part is just him kind of admitting that after this season, he is going to reflect on his Raptors tenure and everything. I think it's especially interesting considering Nick Nurse's contract is not up at the end of this season. It's up a season later. So usually when a coach is still on contract for next season and still is employed by an organization for the next season, they don't say, I'm going to reflect on my future with the organization after this season, unless there has been some sort of conversations about whether or not this is a long-term fit, right? Like most people who are employed beyond this season would not just say, they would just say, "No, I haven't thought about anywhere beside here. My goal is to stay here for the length of my contract, et cetera, et cetera." So, yeah, like, this is all interesting to me. Okay. On the Nick Nurse front, in terms of, like, the responsibility he bears for this, we, as NBA fans and analysts, we constantly critique players like Kevin Durant, like LeBron James, when they begin to talk about their future, when they won't commit to a franchise long term, when their free agency essentially gets in the locker room and causes a distraction. And so I think we have a right to critique coaches also, if that is the case. And I'm not saying that this is going to necessarily become a distraction in the Raptors locker room. I don't know that. This just happened today, but Nick Nurse should have chosen his words a little bit more wisely in that sense. Like, this can very much become a distraction in the locker room. When the next time the media talks to Nick Nurse, this is undoubtedly going to be a question and a storyline. It's going to be a storyline when they talk to the front office at season's end. Maybe even some players will get asked about it. Like, that's because it's our jobs, but it's only our jobs because Nick Nurse said this in the first place. So in terms of him inviting unnecessary distractions into the locker room, I do think he should have just said, I'm not gonna comment on that right now. I'll comment on it when the season's over." Um, he chose to give ESPN this long, amazing answer for whatever reason. I already said so. Um, People like talking to ESPN. But, he didn't have to do that, and I think there's a real reason to critique him for saying that because this is a distraction. It can be a distraction, and there was just never any reason to comment when he coulda just said respectfully, I'm gonna pass." With that being said, like, yeah, this is interesting. All these rumors in the past week or so, the stuff with Houston, the stuff with Ime Udoka, it does appear to me, and what I'm saying now is just complete, like, speculation, but it's just like it just feels like maybe this time between Nick Nurse and the Raptors is running out. 10 years is a long time for, Siakam, for example, has been in the NBA for like 7 years, and his whole time Nick Nurse has either been the lead assistant or the head coach. It's a long time for a coach to be with the exact same players day in, day out. They're with each other a ton, and to not start to wear on each other a little bit. And so to me, these comments and these rumors read a little bit like, okay, maybe everyone is wearing on everyone a little bit, and time to go their separate ways is approaching. That is a little bit how it feels to me. Like I've said all season, Nick Nurse is not the problem of the Raptors this season. I've said that he's a good coach and that I wouldn't fire him if I was the Raptors. But if if he wants to go another way and if the front office feels like it's time to go another way, I would totally understand that from all sides. If the players feel like they need a fresh voice in the locker room, I would totally understand that from all sides. You're going to lose some stuff creatively, especially on the defensive end. I do think you will lose some stuff with Nick Nurse. Um, like, he is the guy that drew up a box and 1 in Steph Curry in the finals, and it worked, and I just don't think, like, people respect him enough for that, or they've forgotten about that kinda stuff. That stuff is hard to do, to execute that stuff in the NBA playoffs, and he did it his first time, so but you're also gonna gain some stuff if you get a new coach, and it might just be as simple as getting a fresh voice in the locker room to get your players to play a little bit harder, to buy into roles a little bit more specifically, I think has definitely been a problem this season, and that does come from coaching. And then also, again, I said this, I like Nick Nurse as a coach, but all I can do from the outside is see how organized the players look, how they look in late game situations. Like, that's the only way I can truly analyze a coach from the outside. And you look at this playoff race, how tight it is, and there's a few games that I can look back and say, okay, this is the head coach's responsibility to have these guys in a better situation than this, and they failed. The Hawks game is a big one where the Hawks pressured the ball off a make, and it goes the other way for an Adrian Griffin layup where, you know, if that's on the head coach to have them organized to know, okay, if you guys are going to pressure the ball full court, somebody has to be protecting the rim. There was a Boston game in Toronto where Nick Nurse used his timeout really poorly, and his challenge really poorly, and I thought it cost them potentially a win at the end of that game. So there are a couple examples I can say, okay, the team was not as organized as it could have been down the stretch, and those things were really costly and led them to win losses. So yeah, it hasn't been a perfect season from Nick Nurse by any means. Still think he's a good coach, but these rumors are getting louder, and so it's going to be an interesting offseason in that regard too. Now, in terms of Ime Udoka, him and Masai Ujiri have a relationship going back. Obviously got let go by the Brooklyn Nets because of he had an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. There seems to be more details in that we just don't know. I'm not going to comment on that situation because, again, we don't know the details of what happened. Obviously, it was wrong of him to have an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate because there's power dynamics at play there that just makes it inappropriate. But you're kidding yourself if you think that Ime Udoka is not going to get a second chance in the NBA. I said this on a pod a couple games ago, but like players and executives, Gerson Rosas is a perfect example, have done much worse and gotten second chances in the NBA. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just a fact. So are you going to be the team that says, no, we're like morally above that, and then watch Ime go to another team when you think he's a good coach? Probably not. Like realistically, when we're just thinking about this from an NBA, you know, calculated standpoint, they're probably not going to pass on Ime because of that when they know other teams will scoop him up so quickly. Mel says it's too messy, no chance in Toronto. I do agree that Toronto has been better than most teams when it comes to this moral compass. By no means perfect. Like take the Terrence Davis situation, for example. He was accused of domestic abuse. The Raptors traded him at the same deadline, but the Raptors could have just let him go instead of getting an asset back for him. I think that asset turned into Ron Harper Jr. or Delano Benton, one of them. But they again, it's good that they traded him and got rid of him after what he did. It's bad that they got an asset for him instead of letting him go. So the Raptors are not perfect in this regard, but they are better than a lot of teams, which does make the Ime thing interesting. To me, at least, I don't think that unless more information comes out about it, I don't think that what he did in Brooklyn, what we know, is going to stop him from getting another head coaching job in the NBA. And I don't think the Raptors would be held back by what he did either. Um, yeah, I don't know enough about Ime otherwise to really speculate on that. All right, that's all I really wanted to say. Thought the Nick Nurse rumors were really interesting, especially at this time in the season. Really bad timing for him to speak on it. Really bad timing for these rumors to get out. However, they got out. But just add it to another thing, another drama for the Raptors to contend with for the rest of this season. Okay, I'm going to go, but as I go, I'm going to watch the Final Four game between South Carolina and Iowa. You guys should tune in. It's on TSN if you're in Canada. It's on ESPN or TNT if you're in America. It's going to be the game of the tournament, and it's a women's basketball game. And yeah, like the women's game this March Madness has just been so much more entertaining than the men's game. It's just been next level hoops. Like, I wrote about this for Sportsnet today if people want to check it out, but because so many of the top male prospects aren't playing in the NCAA anymore, like Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Amin Thompson, on and on, all the women still play in the NCAA. They don't have other options. They're all playing college hoops, and so this game is going to be a battle of two of the best of them. My cat's trying to jump on the thing. Caden Clark in Iowa against Aaliyah Boston in South Carolina, the two last College Player of the Year award winners. So tune into that game, support women's basketball, and we'll be back on Sunday when the Raptors take on the Charlotte Hornets. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you all. Like, comment, subscribe. See you later.